right, so these are specific examples for page 8 from your percent math pack. Let's start with number 1. Number 1 says express as a fraction. So all you have to do is change your percent to a fraction, and it doesn't even say lowest terms, so that's going to be pretty easy. 50% equals, remember when you're changing a percent to a fraction, you just put the percent on a denominator of 100. Now, of course, if you want to go that extra mile and do lowest terms, that would be great. I know that I can divide both of these by 50 with my math facts, right? Don't forget your 100 math facts. They will come in handy on almost every page of this. So 50 divided by 50 is 1. 100 divided by 50 is 2. And there is my percent as a fraction in lowest terms. So that's how you're going to do numbers 1 all the way to 6. Then we've got number 7. Let's talk about number 7. Number 7 asks us to find 50% of 20. So just like we've done before, now first of all, I know that you could do this in your head. 50% of 20 really means half, right? 50% really means half. Half of 20 is 10. I know that you know that, and that's great that you can do it in your head. But in case you want practice on how to do stuff that is not necessarily, you can't do it in your head, you want to follow the steps so that you can do it with any number, even if they're not easy numbers. So 50% written as a decimal would be 0 and 5 tenths, because, don't forget, divide by 100. I don't need the extra 0. And then I take my 20 and I times it with so this is step 2, just like we've done before. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 2 is 10. Put your 0, add them up, put your decimal. 10.0, do I need the 0.0? No. Therefore, 50% of 20 equals 10. So for number 7 all the way to number 14, that's how you do it. You do your usual steps of finding the percent of a number. Change your percent to a decimal by dividing by 100. Multiply that decimal with the number and write your little therefore answer line. All right. Number 15 is the same thing. Now it says estimate, but I want you to actually answer these questions. So don't just estimate, don't guess. I want you to use the steps to figure it out. So 50% of 195. So we're on number 15 now. 50% of 195. So again, step 1. 50% equals 0 and 5 tenths, because when you change a percent to a decimal, you move that decimal 2 spots to the left to make it smaller, and you don't have to include the 0 because, of course, it doesn't matter. It does not change the value of 5 tenths. And then step 2, 195 times up with 0 and 5 tenths. 5 times 5 is 25. Carry your 2. 5 times 9 is 45, plus the 2 that you carried is 47. Carry your 4. 5 times 1 is 5, plus the 4 that you carried, 9. Put your X in your zeros, because the second line is a 0. 0 times anything is 0. And then add them up. Put in your decimal, 97 and 5/10. I don't need to include the 0 in my final answer. Therefore, 50% of 195 is 97 and 5/10. Right, let's take a look at number 21. It says express as a decimal. So these ones are going to be much easier because they're only one step. So when I have 15% and I'm changing it to a decimal, I divide by 100, move my decimal 2 spots over. So 15% is 0 and 15/100. So for numbers 21 all the way to 29, this is all you need to do. Change that percent into a decimal. And then number 30 all the way to 37 are exactly like this, where you're finding the percent of the number and then you're doing the steps. Step 1 and step 2, it's exactly the same. And then number 38 looks very similar to what we saw on the last page, where you have to figure out 2 different percents of 2 different numbers and find out, are they the same or are they bigger, which one's smaller, that kind of thing, and then replace it with either an equal sign or the greater than or a lesser than symbol. So I'm going to check to see how much time we have left. And we have 3 minutes, which should be exactly enough time. So number 38. I have 10% of 80. So step 1, 10% equals 0 and 1/10. Because when you divide by 100, you move that decimal 2 spots over and you don't need the last 0. Step 2, I take my 80 and I multiply it with my new decimal, which is 1/10. So 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 8 is 8. Whoops, that is the wrong way. How many decimal spots do I have? So 8. There's my answer. The second one I have to figure out is 5% of 50. So 5% of 50. 5% equals 0 and 5/10. No, it doesn't. Sorry, that's wrong. That would be 50%. 0 and 5/100. Because when you divide by 100, you move 2 spots over. There's an empty spot. It has 0. Step 2, I take my 5/100, multiply it with 50. So 0 times 5 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0, and 0 times 0 is 0. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 0 is 0 plus the 2 that I carried, and then 5 times 0 is 0. So 0, 5, 2, 0. How many decimal spots do I have? I have 2. So 2 and 5/10. So these are not equal. Obviously, I have 8 over here and 2 and 5/10 over here. Which one's bigger? The mouth eats the bigger one. 8 is bigger than 2 and 5/10. So that's how you do 38, 39, and 40.